Welcome to another episode of Victoria's Lounge from the Crown Plaza Hotel. It's that time of the month again where we have another topic mashup. So we're talking about bullying in high schools and what it's doing particularly to the psyche of our boys. And what's all the fuss with Manels or all male panels? Well, I have a very mixed panel who's ready to delve into those topics. Let's meet them now. Naomi Mutua is a public relations professional and a social media strategist. She focuses on helping change the Kenyan online platform into a positive and useful forum for brands and individuals, and has been blogging on www.akenyangirl.com since 2012. Florence Kamaitha is the founder of Pad Heaven Initiative, an organization that produces low-cost sanitary pads. She has published the first menstruation management booklet distributed to schoolgirls going through puberty and has received countless awards for her work, and has even sat at a round table with Michelle Obama. Robert Kunga is well known in the blogger and developer community in Kenya. He is a founding member of the Bloggers Association of Kenya and served as its first head of operations. And yes, he's the guy behind the viral hashtag Pole kwa Mwirigi trend. Remember, hashtag Victoria's Lounge is how you can chime into the conversation. Topic mashup day. I really love this. So we can just mix up topics, and I know a lot of things will come out beyond what we have set. But Manels, whenever I mention the word, people are like, what? What exactly is that? So for the viewers who don't know, it's an all-male panel, which we've been seeing a lot of, I think, for the entire history of Kenyan TV, if you think about it, because just men are preferred over women when it comes to just being experts. But what do you make of this phenomenon? And people have actually been speaking out about it, Naomi.
I think first it's traditional and cultural, that men have always been allowed to have a say, while women tend to stay more in the background. So in the same nature, when we think of experts, who to go to first, we tend to look at the men first, forgetting that there's women who are probably as qualified or even more qualified to speak on the same subject. So there's the cultural aspect to it.
And what do you make of it, Robert?
Well, yes, I think I'll agree with what Naomi is saying. There's inertia, I would say now, social inertia. It's that I would think a lot of the people who are in a position to make a decision about who is on a panel, when they were interns, when they were progressing through their career until the point that they've gotten to, they've just been, that's what they've been seeing, and that's what they expect. But I mean, it doesn't make any sense to lock out 50% of the population, just in terms of now the views and the kind of thoughts that can be brought to the table, especially when you think about now the what is being spoken about in some of these panels, and it has a very broad national outlook, so it would make a lot of sense to make sure that those voices are included. And
I wonder if maybe the subject matter makes a difference in terms of whether we see more women or not.
I don't think it does, because we have more women who are trying actually now to vie for politics, so you can say we have more men in politics. If it's just an opinion, everyone has an opinion. So you cannot say we have less women with this opinion. So I also think our society will tend to believe someone who is in authority, and we have most men in positions of authority. If it's companies, if it's in our government, so there are more men up there. So when they are giving their opinions, the society tends to believe them more.
And I wonder, because even if, Naomi, if we have a woman on the panel and yes, she's qualified, would she be taken seriously though among her male counterparts?
Some do, and we must give credit to those who actually take the effort to encourage the women to speak better, to give their opinion. But you find in some cases even how the woman is introduced in the panel, it's a softer sell as opposed to the man. And they, like I remember a case of where a friend was saying that every time she stopped appearing on a certain TV show, because every time she would, the compliments would just start first with her dressing instead of her expertise. So she actually stopped going to that show. So it's how it's framed when you even begin the conversation.
And I guess because it has to do with conditioning of how we generally view women on television. I know it's something that we deal with as women in media. A lot of times you're just seen as the flower.
Yes.
You know, so people look at looks before content. You know, and that tends to be, I don't know, you know, from your perspective as a man, Robert, if that tends to be the case among most.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would agree with you on that point. And in fact, I'd even go a little further in that, and to support what Naomi was saying.
Yeah.
A lot of the times you'll find that there would be a last-minute addition when somebody has realized, oh, by the way, this panel seems to be of very flat, or so let's think of someone to bring in. And then now, like Naomi said, now I don't think it should be looking for balance sake.
Yeah.
So you're making sure let's balance the panel. That really doesn't make any sense, because you should be thinking about what are they bringing to the panel.
Very true.
Yeah. And so once that has been thought of, and when you're thinking about the content, then from the reception side, if I'm looking at this panel and they're talking about, for instance, politics, then if the lady on the panel is giving if the points that she's bringing are just as good as the one the men are giving, then you get caught into the conversation that they're having.
Yeah. I mean, you're right, because we're talking about, every time we think about the constitution of a panel, it's the gender and not necessarily the quality. Because why not have 5 women and 1 man?
Yeah.
You know, we don't think about it in that equation, but 2 women, 1 man, which, by the way, Victoria's Lounge, we do think about that. I mean, what do you make of that? Because a lot of times, and I know from our end when we plan, you think, oh, we need to get a woman for having a woman, which is wrong, you know, and sending the wrong perception, I think, to the public.
I talked to one producer and he was telling me women are not, they don't look forward to these interviews because first they'll be labeled, you know, you might be a doctor, you have your PhD, you've achieved all this, but the media will just call you mother and wife, you know. So they don't give you that respect that you deserve. So you can call a woman for an interview and she will just flat out say no. Or short notice, she'll just give you an excuse. So we also need to tell women to actually come up, take up these opportunities and actually just come out and brag about yourself, your achievements, what you've actually achieved, because these people won't tell it to the world. They'll just call you mother and daughter. So just come and have a sit and tell the world what you have achieved. I think it's something we need to just tell women to come up and do.
You know, it's so true, Naomi, and I'm just thinking of that in terms of, like she said, you call a woman and say, can you come on? And she'll say, it's too short notice. A lot of times we'll get that. And I wonder if it's because they fear. It's a woman who's qualified.
Yes.
She has experience. She can bring quality to the conversation, but she generally is afraid of, you know, expressing herself. So what do we need to do to boost the confidence level for a lot of women?
I think, as Florence is saying, first, the self needs the initiative to be able to have the confidence, and it's not done in one day. You start building it maybe by speaking at your place of work, you know, with your family and friends. Get an audience to test yourself against that is less judgmental than the general public. Then we need to also take up maybe the simpler and shorter interviews, the pre-recorded interviews, where you have a chance to correct what you were saying, you have a chance to edit the tape, and then get used to live interviews. But the women have to also be willing to put themselves out there. And when you make mistakes, it's okay to make mistakes. Learn from the lesson there. And
not feeling afraid to practice, because sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm such a novice, I have to practice to be on TV, but it's so necessary.
Practice in front of the mirror if you have to.
And just kind of see the areas where you probably stumble a bit more, but it's so necessary, because it is another element when you're doing TV or radio, communication. So you may know your stuff, but now expressing it's something totally different. So how do we get more women, or how do we gender mainstream, if you will, in the media? Robert.
I think like what Naomi said, it would actually start behind the camera. So it would start before even you're going online.
Okay.
So, you know, like taking the initiative when there's a presentation that's happening at work, taking the initiative when there's a reading at church, just getting used to that audience. Because it's the same across the board. TV is not easy to do.
True.
Yeah, like just in the green room before we all came here, we're trying to make sure that our butterflies are flying information. So it would be taking advantage of all those, taking advantage of those opportunities for speaking. And then also now just taking advantage, because a lot of the time what's going to happen is that For instance, you'll be called at maybe a smaller station, or you'll be called on radio before you're called on TV.
Right.
Yeah, so just taking advantage of that situation when it comes. And then also now on the side of the people who are making the decisions, even though you may have come up in a situation where you're used to just talking to men or creating panels with men, having that mindset from that demand side.
Right.
Now I'm the producer of this show, there's this problem, and I think we need to work on it. So looking past now, let me get balance for balance sake, and now let me actually look for people who can add value to this conversation.
No, absolutely. You wanted to
also, if you've been invited to a panel as a man,
Yes.
I think you should also ask, are there women on this panel?
Yeah.
So
That's really very
it comes
important,
from you're hosting a show. So you should also ask, are there women in that show? If you've been invited, you should ask that question. So it also starts from asking these questions.
Right. And I think even when it comes to referral, because I think it was a lady that we tried to reach out to. She's very well known, a Twitter bigwig. And we reached out to her. She wasn't available, but she recommended another woman who could come in her stead. And we don't see enough of that. Sometimes you'll just probably say a colleague who happens to be male, but give a chance to your other female ladies to come on and shine, if you will. And we don't think about that aspect. But thinking about the planning, and you brought up a really good point, Robert. I was reading a statistic from the Media Council of Kenya, and they were saying men 10 times more likely to be used as a source of news in Kenyan media than women. And then men are more central in print, 72% more central in a print story.
Yes.
And then 46% more central in electronic media. What does that do to the psyche of women, and just in terms of perception in media, when you see more men?
I think it does deflate us a little bit, but we can turn that around. So we have to start thinking also, not just for us, but for the next generation.
Yeah.
If we know that already this is the challenge that we're facing, how do we train then our girls to start being more assertive to the point that they can articulate themselves and therefore have more opportunities? Because once people know that you're good at speaking, they tend to pick you. And it comes from a point of practice, a point of reference. If I know that Florence is good at this subject, it's because probably I've seen her do it. So we need to also think of training our younger girls to get there. Public speaking is not easy for most people, but it has to come from training over and over.
Absolutely. And we've seen efforts being made. The gender rule is something that came up, but flopped. And I'm wondering why. Of course, this has to do a lot with the electorate and whether they are ready to vote in women. And then you see the issue of tokenism coming in because they're nominated into parliament. And you're wondering, are they really adding value? Because now we're bloating this form or system of government. And what do you make of it? Is it just lip service when we say, oh, gender rule, we need to observe?
I think it was a response to the fact that, I mean, the table is skewed in favor of men when it comes to specifically politics. And I don't think that it should be par for the course for women to go through the kind of harassment they do when they put themselves forward for political posts. I would imagine that rule was in place to try and mitigate against that specifically. That it is not a level playing field. And it's like what Florence had mentioned. Even if you're putting yourself forward and you'll be talking about a development agenda, it always gets cut down to are you married? Are you taking care of your children? And that really generally has nothing to do with running for political office. So I would imagine that gender rule was put in place to mitigate that. And I don't think that should be par for the course. I don't think that you should expect harassment as a woman putting yourself forward for political office.
And speaking of which, because you talk about women who rise up in the ranks politically or in appointed office, and we saw a few, the moment they pipe up or show some sort of bravado, they're hit back. Either they're sexualized or demeaned just simply by virtue of being a woman.
So it so happens like that women are derailed by certain things. Motherhood will derail you. You'll go for maternity leave for like 5 months. As you're on leave, your male counterparts are already excelling at work, they're getting promotions. So you'll find more men up there than women, and we just cannot avoid it. Some people cannot avoid motherhood. So you find that the women who are up there probably had to give up something to get there. So when you get there is when they start asking you these questions. Why are you not married at 50 and you're the CEO of this company? So they will always find something to hit back. So we actually need to, as Nov was saying, start with the next generation. What are we telling the girls right now?
Yeah.
Can you have it all? Can you achieve this
Right.
and still do this?
Right.
Or do you have to give up everything so you can achieve this? And
Right.
it's so possible, you can actually balance. So it's now up to us to start talking to young women right now
Yeah,
and
yeah.
encouraging them that and teaching them it is
Yeah.
actually possible.
Absolutely, showing them early enough that their opinions do indeed
Yes,
matter.
yes.
All right, let's take a short break on Victoria's Lounge. We have a lot more coming up. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge. Now, our next topic is a really tough one, bullying. And I don't know if any of you had gone through that in your school experience. I know I did, but probably not as dramatic and traumatic as what we've been seeing lately in the news. And it really kind of brought to the fore this issue of what's happening to our children, particularly the boys. This has been a very silent epidemic, if you will. The schools have kept it very quiet because they want to kind of maintain or preserve the reputation of the school. But Naomi, you know, we're seeing this come up now. What do you make of this news, even though it is something that was there, it existed?
I think, yes, bullying has existed. I am thankful that I went to schools where hazing, as it was, or initiation into school was minimal, where maybe you were made to pick up the litter or something,
Yeah, yeah,
where it didn't harm your spirit, you harm you physically or mentally.
yeah.
But right now what we're seeing is that it's not just the bullying, but that people are getting away with harmful acts. And that, it makes me wonder, is the school leadership complicit in this, or do they just don't care that
Right.
they have a responsibility on people's children's and people's lives?
Right.
They just don't take their jobs seriously.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I as a parent, you give them your child, and they really don't seem to care that they are responsible for this life
Yeah,
in
yeah.
any shape and form.
And that seems to be the biggest fear is, does the school administration care? Because you see it happening and then it's the equivalent of a slap on the wrist for the administrator who's probably suspended, investigated, and then probably transferred to another school. And you're wondering, so how do we really deal with this issue? For you, Robert, when you were going to school, was it really prevalent?
No, yes, like she mentioned.
Did you bully? Were you an instigator?
No,
Robert,
I wasn't. Yes, but again, it's not something that's spoken about generally. I mean, like you'd find like even when you met like over the school holidays and people have come from different schools, that's not generally what somebody would focus on.
About, right.
But like what you're beginning to see is actually when this story started to come up, there's a lot of people started to reveal the experiences that they had,
Yeah.
and you could see that it was a lot more widespread than you expected.
Right.
And it's a matter of concern across the board, especially now, like when you said for boys, I think it's the flip side of our earlier panel now. The boys generally are socialized to not talk about things like this, to not express their emotions, and actually to bravery some of these things. So complaining about having a rough time at school really is not something that you think is going to have any feedback.
Right.
So I think like what would be happening is again there's a lot of silence from the victims. So to some extent, I mean I can't place all the blame on all of the school authorities. Of course, some of them did drop the ball,
Right.
but a lot of this has been hidden by the victims themselves.
Right.
So what would happen is that in the limited time that the school headmaster or maybe now a senior official has with the students, they'd be on their best behavior.
Right.
So you wouldn't see the signs that anything is happening on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at times you find student leadership are aware, but they will not now escalate it to administration to actually do something about it, which is a problem because they are now tasked with bringing order to the student body, and sometimes complicit in all of this, which is sad.
Also, I think the school leadership putting too much authority on prefects. They're like demigods in schools. I don't think that is right because some of these things are done by the prefects themselves.
Right.
So I think that's one thing they need to look at. And as Bobby was saying, we need to teach our boys how to just speak up. Tell them it's okay to cry about these things. It's okay to just, you're not weak if you talk about it because it might be harmful, as I was saying. So it's going to a point where we just need to start telling our young men, if you see something happening to even your friend, speak out, just talk to somebody in authority. If it's not your mother, talk to your sister or your auntie, but just speak out. And for us also as adults, we should learn, it's not, you know, the way we tell men, man up, you know.
Yes.
So we should tone down on that, because I don't think a Form 2 student, you're telling them to man up and they're getting hurt. I don't think that's right.
I mean, and you're right, because it has implications later on in life. I remember reading a story of a man who's talking about when he was in high school, a senior student, he was taking a shower and he put an electric wire in the water. And he almost lost his life, and then later developed heart problems. And you're just thinking, how many other stories are replicated across high schools across the country? But if we don't bring it out and talk about it, I wonder how we can normalize the conversation and make it something that the boys feel, like you said, okay to talk about it.
I think most of the time you'll find that the victims may be fearful of repercussions. So I think we have to create systems where maybe other people can speak for them. Like Florence was saying, if you see something happening to your friend, you should be able to report it. For yes, there's fear of further victimization, but we have to learn that in as much as kids play pranks sometimes and think that some things are funny, we have to show them where the limits are. So as parents, as teachers, and as the adults in community, and also as people who've gone through this, so we know it's harmful. Let's not keep propagating it.
You know, and Robert, as the man on the panel, what kind of effect does this have? Because it's a dangerous culture that is embedded in the schools. A boy comes in knowing that the probability of him going through something like that is very high, because you have to be initiated into the student body. But what kind of effect does it have on boys growing up, and then men?
So I'll put aside first, of course, the physical elements now, of course, physical injury, and I'll go actually into what I'd say now is the emotional side. And I think although we profess, obviously, as an African culture, not to pay too much attention to this, you are beginning to see even in the job market that people are looking to more than just your grades when they are looking to hire you in their company. You'll find a lot more people are doing psychometric testing. People are actually looking at your emotional intelligence as part of the component of what it is that you're required to do in your job. So I think from that, there is beginning to be pressure from that side to make sure that from the hiring side that you're getting people who are well put together emotionally. So hopefully with time that should put a premium on students coming out of schools that are making sure that their students are that they're taken care of what I'll say from a 360 perspective. That academically they're okay, physically they're sound, and emotionally they're okay. Because we are beginning to see that in the job market. People don't just want to look at this person just has an A. We are looking past that. So it's becoming more important going forward to make sure that somebody is okay even from an emotional perspective.
No, absolutely. And there was also a suggestion from someone saying, what if we didn't leave disciplining solely to the student leadership prefects and have teachers kind of be a bit more involved when it comes to what's happening, because a lot of times you find they're very detached from the student body or what's happening with students. So these things happen and go on and no one says a word. Do you think that would help?
Well, it's funny because teachers are blaming the parents, because now
it's a blame game.
It's a blaming, like you cannot touch my child. I want my child to just go to school and learn. So you don't discipline your child in school, at home, and then they're not disciplined in school. So amongst themselves now they get to do that. Like you find prefects now taking charge and doing what they've been doing. So I think also parents need to let go a bit of their children, because I don't think a teacher will just wake up and want to punish your child. So, and then they spend most of the time with the teachers and in school. So you should trust the teacher to make that decision, discipline your child. So I think parents need to let go a bit, unless you're actually doing a full-time job at home of disciplining the child. So I think also the teachers and the parents need to look at how each part is disciplining their children.
And we'll continue this part of the conversation after the break on what parents can do and what more in terms of pressure they can put on the schools to change this bullying culture. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge. Now, we left off on the whole aspect of parents, because sometimes you'll find, because they don't want to bring shame to their child, they will now decide to transfer the student to another school and don't deal with the issue. It's not dealt with at the school for sure, and it's been moved now from school to school. Even in the case of a bully, they're moved from school to school as well. So the problem's never really dealt with. So what more should parents do to be a bit more involved in the process?
I'm not a parent,
okay.
So
but at least from
but I am,
outside perspective.
I have nephews, and kids can be troublesome, and they can be hard-headed, and they can be really a big pain. But you have to weather through it, because teenage does weird things to people, and we can't avoid it.
Right.
But we have, like Florence was saying, we have to take responsibility in teaching the kids what is good and what is not good, and in disciplining them.
Right.
In terms of the parents, yes, you hand over your child over to a teacher, but does that mean you don't take responsibility for what they do thereafter?
Of course.
So the kid has to understand that transferring schools does not fix the problem. It may take you out of maybe the center of attention and the center of the problem, but will you take it on to the next place?
Yes.
So, and I think it's also good that if you're transferring a child, maybe you need to be open to the school that you're going to and letting them know, my kid was kicked out of this school, and I'm trying to fix this, so watch out for these signs. Cooperate between the teachers and the kids. And then in terms of the teachers, don't delegate all your power and responsibility to the student leadership. I think that's a mistake some teachers are making. They don't want parents to blame them, and they want the kids to be disciplined, and so they leave it to their fellow kids. But these are kids, they don't know limits, they don't know what to do, they're not adults, so we have to take the responsibility as adults in society. Let's stop delegating.
And in them not knowing what to do, you'll find boys who have gone through bullying don't even know how to begin that conversation, even if they wanted to. It's like, now if I tell my mom, she will flip. You know. So I mean, Robert, what would you advise a young man who's watching, and he's wanting to start that conversation, or at least to open up what's been happening? How does he even begin that?
Well, I think it's just important just to be open. Just to make sure at least you have, even if it's one trusted person, even if it's not your parents, maybe you have an uncle, your favorite uncle, but somebody who's older, somebody you would regard as your mentor. And that would not be limited to just bullying. Across the board, I mean, it would just be good to have somebody that can advise you on life in general, now bullying being a part of that. And actually, to follow through on that, I think we are being a bit tough on teachers and the administration as a whole, because when something like this comes up, we tend to make it front and center. But we also have to remember that there are very many other things that are happening that the children are exposed to. So, for instance, you'd have a school administration having to get worried about drugs, or maybe sexual conduct. And so, what would happen is that bullying now has a lower priority. So I think even when you're talking about what we're going to do about this, it will be now assigning that priority. Just thinking that, okay, this is now an issue that you also need to keep at the same level as whatever things that you're putting in place to make sure that drugs or alcohol or sex, I mean, in a mixed school or even in another school, just to make sure that these things there's parity between how you're, because like I think what happened with bullying is that it slipped into the cracks. Like a lot of the teachers and the student administration are looking outward for the threats that would come to the children, and it turns out now you need to also look inward as well.
Right. And a lot of times those threats, they'd want to keep quiet because now the reputation of the school is at stake. And now you're wondering, so what is the role now of the school administration? Because they're feeling we can't afford to have any cloud over the name of the school. So these things are kept very, very quiet. Even if they do happen, if it does get out, if there's any leakage, they try to manage it the best way they can. But of course, in the cases of some very elite schools, they couldn't. And it had to come out, and I think it was very necessary. But how do we do we need an outside actor, if you will, to come in and help with that issue of schools concealing a lot of these cases?
I think not. Because I feel parents, the minute they start talking about it, the school administration has no other option. What I've seen in the rural areas is that we feel like it's a privilege for our child to be in this school. So you can't really talk about it. You're feeling I might get expelled, or so and then you might not even have money to transfer your child to another school. So most parents are forced to keep quiet, and the school can actually contain that. So I think parents need to start talking about it. We should have avenues where they can even talk about it anonymously. We can have forums, PTA meetings, we have boards for schools.
Yeah.
So I think they should also create platforms where these parents can actually talk about the administration without them knowing it's parents so and so who talked about it.
Right.
So I think parents need to start talking about it, but also for parents, start talking to your children. I've seen a lot of parents who allow their kids to just be on the tablets and phones the whole day. And you don't know what kind of thing that child is going through.
Right.
So create time and start getting close to your child. We also have after school mentorship programs in churches. We also have that mentorship program by a pastor here in Nairobi. And he actually gets boys between the ages of 10 and 16, where they just go camping and they talk about these issues. So I think we can create more platforms like those ones where the child can speak, the parents can speak, and then now we can deal with the schools.
And I wonder, because you mentioned the whole issue of parents fearing piping up about what's happening, because they don't want to cause friction with the school. You know, and I wonder if the schools have become a bit too powerful. You know, a lot of times you have the, you know, alma mater who are very influential people, and they also want to protect the name of the school as well. So people feel, oh, if I do, I'm crossing not just the school administration, but several other high-powered people. Do you feel that also has kind of added to the silencing of such cases?
It may have, but what kind of parent then are you being if you're letting your child suffer for the sake of protecting a school's reputation, or protecting a higher up person's reputation, or being fearful of them? The child is the center of this. I think as a parent we should take everything we have and protect the child, regardless of whose hairs we're crossing. That is the role of a parent. And if we keep letting the schools and the alumni get away with it, we're just stemming this culture into the schools. So on the issue of boards and maybe things that need to oversee this, I agree with Florence in that we don't need to create more committees and things like that. But I think there are already things in place. What does the TSC do? What do the educational boards do? I believe there's enough systems that can be used to put this in check.
No, absolutely. And I'm wondering what this means now in terms of just changing the culture, because we have systems in place, like you said, TSC. What is their role? Are they empowered enough to respond? But for a school, what would you recommend, Robert, needs to be done to create a safe environment where boys feel that if this does happen, I have a place to go, or it is communicated that this is not tolerated as behavior here?
Well, I think what needs to happen is that we need to look at this with a holistic approach. Because I mean the scandal that was happening around schools before this one was around cheating in examinations. So if we are looking at every element that's happening in the school independently of each other, then we're probably going to work in cross purposes. So it's making sure that these things are done across the board. Because if you have a safe environment that allows you to speak out, then you'll speak out in the event that you notice there's cheating. Then you'll speak out in the event that there's bullying. You'll speak out in the event that even at a basic level, you feel that you paid for a hockey stick and you don't play hockey. But I think we need to look at it from a holistic point of view. We need to look at what are the things that are creating these problems across the board. Because we are having issues with cheating. We are looking at that. Then you see, once you have that control failure that allows cheating to happen, then it opens for the door for all of these other things to happen. Because like I would imagine, like if you had one school official who wants to speak out about bullying, they'd be told, hey, but we were with you cheating. So you need to keep that story down. So it's just making sure that you tighten controls across the board. And I think whatever you're doing now from the administration side, that the efforts we are doing to try and mitigate some of these things, think about it from a holistic approach.
Absolutely. Florence, I'll let you have the final word as we wrap up.
Well, I think they've said everything. And just to add, let's not have the blame games, because I think the prefects are blaming the teachers for letting go, the teachers are blaming the parents. So if we can all come and sit down and just work this out, I don't think bullying should be tolerated. And I think we have systems in place to get rid of it completely.
Absolutely. So all actors who are involved take
Yes.
responsibility and responsibility to the student body, administration, and the parents as well. Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate this conversation. And that does it for Victoria's Lounge. Thank you to the Crown Plaza Hotel for hosting us. Keep the conversation going on social media. #Victoria's Lounge. Have a lovely evening, and let's do this again next week.